I smoked everybody.
Two-time Mr. Olympia, Cutler.
My childhood, it affected me, man. Like my mom leaving when I was a young age. And listen, she's the greatest mom in the world. Like she came back, but like having that tension between my parents, like it affected me in a lot of ways, man. Like it made me crawl up and not, like I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. Chris Aceto took me under his wing and trained me with no financial discussion whatsoever. Trained me all the way through pro. And you know what Chris said to me? He goes, "You're gonna be so great someday. I know it will come back around." He's like, "Man, this kid's gonna be Mr. Olympia." And at the time, listen, it was me and my girlfriend where I was completely broke. I remember she was working 2 jobs and I was working, like I said, just odd job security. I just graduated college. If you ask me the biggest highlight of my career, you know, you're gonna think Olympias or '09 comeback or whatever. It could have been that Tournament of Champions because that made me. I put myself a little bit in debt. So all the people that think I always had money, I remember I had a $14,000 credit card debt. I was training like a maniac, but I trained twice a day. For these people that say like you can't get ripped, like using protein shakes and stuff, I used like 4 out of 6 meals in '01 were protein powder. You know, if you know how bodybuilding is, like you're great when you're on top, but when you fall down, like Dexter beat me and Phil was on his way up and like, okay, Jay's done, you know? So you start to wonder, fuck, am I done? Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I don't love this anymore. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I just don't have the drive like I had. And to be honest, I looked around and I said, this is it? This is the feeling I got when I won the biggest title that I trained my whole life for. And I thought there would be more.
Are you happy?
When you look around and like it's all said and done, man, like what's there?
I'm now with Gasp. I've been wearing that stuff for like 7-8 years. I've been knowing them personally. The owner is Michael. He's the greatest guy. He just supports the sport of bodybuilding, putting up events, building community, friendships. It's all about love and positivity. The clothing is very cool. Everyone who's deep into bodybuilding knows GASP stands for bodybuilding. If that's where you want to spend your money on, then use my code and have a good conscience doing so.
Check out the huge summer sale at Code Leo on Better Bodies and Gasp.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Overcome podcast, and I'm sitting here with Jay Cutler, the 4-time Mr. Olympia, the only one to ever come back and win it. And we know Jay Cutler as who he is right now, but I'm really interested to finding out like how you got to be who you were and how you got to experience all that success, not only in bodybuilding, but also like you keep going, the busiest guy ever. You do more like appearances than the current Mr. Olympia. So you're basically like the number one in representing the sport, I would say. And I know you grew up in Massachusetts, very little town, probably like 5,000 people back then, with like 6 siblings, right? So I want to know, like, how was it growing up there, and how was your kind of family values? Did you like have dinner every day at night, and your dad taught you lessons? Like, how was that?
Man, it's a long story. Yeah, so I grew up in a place called Sterling, Massachusetts. And Sterling, Massachusetts is known for, there's a nursery rhyme, which you, coming from where you might not know this nursery rhyme, but it's, Mary had a little lamb. So this lamb followed Mary Sawyer to school. And that is actually in Sterling, Mass is where this nursery rhyme was derived from. So this lamb actually followed this girl to school, and you know they created this. So they have an actual lamb in the common of our town. 6,000 people when I grew up there. It's about 12,000 now. Like you said, youngest of seven kids. 3 brothers, 3 sisters, mom and dad, you know, very close-knit family, taught a lot of good values. My dad was a highway superintendent. My parents were separated when I was really young, when I was 4. And my brothers and sisters, there's a big age gap. So my oldest, I'm 51, so I'm the youngest. My oldest brother's 66. So My sister and I are a year apart, so I have an older sister that's 1 year, and then there's a 10-year age gap between, my next sisters, and then they're all a year apart. So it goes like 66, 65, 64, 63, and then there's that 10-year gap. Like I said, so my brothers and sisters kind of raised me, to be honest, because they separated and my mom split away and spent some time in Florida. We were in Massachusetts, but my dad, as being a highway superintendent, he was very, actually took very good care of us. Like we had large dinners every night, but he worked during the day. So, my older brothers and sisters kind of raised me. And my brother started a concrete company when I was 11. So from 11 on, I pretty much was spending time with them. I worked with them in the business. And then, but, as a kid, I was just a very active child. I mean, I rode bikes. My brothers had dirt bikes. My brothers did actually have a little weight set, a concrete weight set downstairs. But pretty much I was just kind of very self-sufficient, to be honest, because growing up without a lot of discipline, in a sense, we were pretty much just, free to do whatever we wanted. So, I mean, I was in school, didn't play any sports until I got to high school, but I was just hanging out with my family and being active, and that's pretty much how I kind of started my lifestyle. And being from a small town and having people from that town really didn't get out and do a lot later. So like I never thought I was actually going to leave. A lot of people end up staying in that area. But I picked up a bodybuilding book when I was 12. My sister's boyfriend at the time had a bodybuilding book, and I remember seeing Chris Dickerson in this book. And I looked at that physique, and I was like, man, this is amazing. I showed my oldest brother, Bob, who he's the one that's 66, and I said, man, this would be something. Because I admired, like, all the characters,
That was when
superheroes.
When you were 9?
I was 12.
Okay, because when you were 9, he was just 1. So
yeah, so it's amazing that...
Hey guys, my new ebook is out. 108 pages. This book is a total steal. 15 years of knowledge, experience, and science. Everything you need to know to use steroids responsibly, mitigating the downsides, or optimize high-end TRT practices for longevity and health. Also, a breakdown of the compounds from A to Z. All you need to know. Get it now.
Yeah, because it was a book that had been hanging around for a while,
okay,
right?
yeah.
82, right?
Yeah.
So I was just amazed by the development. And, I played with, I don't know, not necessarily dolls, but these characters, like I had Superman toys and I had Batman toys. And just like any kid, you have dreams and aspirations. And for some reason, man, I was always drawn to the muscle. Like I've always drawn to something. And I'll be honest, man, at that age, I actually was, because I was so active and I feel like my genetics, I actually had a good physique for a young kid. I was that kid with the little abs and had the biceps. And I wasn't big or anything. I was just lean. So I had cuts. I said, man, I want to look like this. And my brother said, man, that's crazy, because the development, Chris Dickerson at that time, 82 Olympia, was he had it all, right? He had the calves and he had the, the big biceps and whatever. And that was the first time I ever saw a book. And I think from then on, I was always had it in my head, bodybuilding. And I didn't know anything about bodybuilding. I didn't know what it took, and my brothers weren't into weight training as much. They had a weight set, and I would get under that weight set. And I remember at one point I did 70 pounds on the bench press, and that was when I was super young. I wasn't even a teenager yet. And I mean, all through high school, I kept going into GNCs, and I seen all these books, and I got active in football when I was a sophomore. One of my best friends, Jeremy, got me into football, and that's when we started seeing the weight room a little bit. And then one of my friends was bodybuilding at a local Gold's Gym, and he took me one time when I was a sophomore to the gym. And I had this on my mind, from junior year forward, I'm like, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. And I remember telling...
So you just played football? And
just played football.
But you didn't even consider football,
No,
actually.
I had played, but it was the team sport never really was that exciting. But when I loved the bodybuilding stuff. And I remember, after sophomore year into my junior year, after, really getting a physique, because at the time we were just toying around the weight rooms and stuff. I'm like, I want to bodybuild. I want to join a gym when I graduate high school, and I'm actually gonna bodybuilding. I actually joined the gym my 18th birthday, August 3rd, 1991, is when I actually paid the $300 for the local Gold's Gym. And I went in there and I paid for the membership, and I didn't even start training like that day. I started like probably a month later because I started college then. But I remember when I graduated high school, my high school yearbook, I had like no pain, no gain. I put Gold's Gym in there because I had it all in my mind, which is such a crazy scenario because you could never imagine, like I said, like, why did I start bodybuilding when no one in my family did and no one around me really I knew anything about bodybuilding. But I had been picking up books at GNC. That was the only place. There were no mom and pops then. There were no Max Muscles or like local supplement shops. It was just straight GNC is where you would. So I'd go in the mall and I'd pick up the magazines in the racks. And I actually I read a book when I was 16 called Beyond Built by Bob Paris. Bob Paris was like a really handsome, like he had tanned, like he had all the look. And I looked at him like in these magazines, and I'm like, damn, this guy looks really good. And so I bought his book, and I actually still have that book in my mom's attic. And that really, I read through it and I learned the routine. So I'm like, when I went in the gym, when I joined at 18, I kind of had an idea how to train just based off that book, because this was way before internet and YouTube and any of this stuff. And like my family didn't understand it. I don't think, but like to this day now, I think it's not surprising for them or people I went to high school with, because like I said, I mean, I started, I had a great body playing football, and I was always the strongest and fastest, and I was athletic in that sense, but I never really had a passion to do sports. And when I went to college, graduated high school, they had no program for football or anything like that, so it was perfect for me. I just joined the gym, and I was just buried in classes and training, and that's kind of how it all started for me. So like lengthy background, but I can just basically say, like, I was super active. I was always lean. I was always muscular. Even at 12, I mean, I have pictures of me flexing from probably 9 years old, 12 years old, 15. I mean, my mom used to take pictures, because my mom actually moved back from Florida, so she moved very close to where we lived. So like they were separated when I was 4, and obviously that caused a lot of disruption in my life. And like I relied a lot on my brothers and sisters to kind of watch over me. But man, my dad used to cook these feasts, man. Like he'd make, like, I remember we'd drink as a family. There was all 7 of us plus like the friends and whatever else. And my dad would cook these big pasta dinners, and every Sunday he'd cook like for the family. But I remember we'd drink like 2 gallons of milk like every single time we sat down at the dinner table every night. And but breakfast and stuff we had to kind of fend for ourselves, like we had cereal and stuff. But I remember one thing, my dad never allowed us to eat like sugar cereals, and like he always had us on a good diet. And my brothers would grow stuff in their gardens, and so we'd eat a lot of vegetables. To this day, my brother raises cattle now, so later, we kind of had like a small farm. So we had chickens and everything. My brother still raises some pigs, and I think he has about 30 cows. But my dad was kind of that kind of it was a farm town where we kind of grew up. So.
And you figured out the nutrition part also through that book?
No, I was lucky enough. I mean, that's another story. But I knew a little bit about nutrition. But, you go in the gym, and no matter what it's like you still watch people train. And, like, people are training wrong. So I joined this Gold's Gym in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1991, August 3rd. And I saw some great guys. Like, there were some pretty decent, like, local guys. And the gym owner, Andy Stratus, kind of took a liking to me. And, I had paid that membership for the first year. But then he offered, like, hey, if you come to the gym and clean a couple nights a week, I'll comp your membership. And at the time, man, I was busted. I didn't have any money. I was working, like, security, and I worked as a cook at my sister's restaurant. My sister had like a small breakfast restaurant. I worked there. And then eventually when I was competing at Teen Nationals later, which is another story, but I worked as on a golf course doing golf course maintenance. But I progressed so fast, to be honest. I was pursuing a degree in criminal justice from 1991 to 93. I graduated my associates in that. And during that time, man, you wouldn't believe the progress. I met Chris Aceto probably 6 months into training, just fortunate enough, like I started making so much progress right out of the gate.
Where did you meet him?
Well, I was lucky enough that like we had this, you know, at the time there was this culture in the gym, and you know, I started training. I had these really big legs. You know, right away my legs got explosive because I was a fullback in high school, and I actually had trouble fitting the jeans. My legs were shaped so like they were so not big, but just the shape of them. I had a crazy sweep to my legs as you know, as developed as they were. And I remember, you know, there was this show called American Muscle Magazine. It was a show in California, and it became Muscle Mania later. Like they held all these contests all over the place. But there was a local guy named Derek Farnsworth, okay, who's, well, no, he's out here now. So he lived in Fitchburg, and I was in Sterling, so it was a couple towns over, and there was like a crazy gym culture there. And this guy from American Muscle would call around to all the gyms. You know, Paul DeMeo grew up like in Boston, and Mike Matarazzo was from there. So like we had seen like all these guys start to come on the scene, and this guy would call around and say, hey, is there any new talent? And somehow Derek threw my name out there, like there's this young kid from Sterling with crazy legs, because I had these monster legs. And he's like, he just started training, but he's got a lot of potential. So the guy started calling the Gold's Gym and being like, and this was Lou Zawick, it was his name. And he's like, you know, who's this kid with the legs? So he put me on the phone. He's like, man, you know, I sent him pictures, you know, the gym owner and stuff, said, hey, this kid's got a lot of potential.
Did you mail them to him?
Yeah, because we only had like Polaroids at that point. And the guy's like, you can be successful in bodybuilding. At the time, Dennis Newman was like the young guy coming in. And, you know, he had, like, Eddie Robinson was a teenager, and, you know, Sean Ray was a teenager. Like, he talked about all these people that he compared me to. Well, that incentivized me to go harder and harder, and he's like, you know, you can do really well. So Lou started calling the gym and telling me, you need to get on the stage and compete, and I had no intention of doing that. And the gym owner's like, listen, man, I'll give you free gym membership also if you compete in our local show.
So you knew you wanted to be bodybuilder, but you didn't even know you wanted to compete.
I didn't think about competing because, you know, just like every kid, I didn't feel I was ready. And I didn't have the knowledge. So anyway, during that time, Lou Zawick said, hey, Chris Aceto, who's his wife at the time was Laura Carvel. She was second best in the world to Linda Murray, or, you know, I think at the time. And it's like, hey, they're going to be coming through. Chris, can you take a look at this young kid? Chris is like, okay. At the time, Chris was just getting the name as like the nutritionist. He had been in California. He moved back to Maine, and he was only about 2 hours from me.
How much older is he? Like 8 years or something, right?
Well, I'm 51. He's probably 58.
Yeah.
So he was, you know, a little older. So if I was 18, he was like 24 or something like that. I think it was around the time. And he was pretty big at the time. He was competing and everything. And, you know, obviously his wife at the time was, you know, second best in the world. She was amazing. So they came through the gym, and I remember it was like a big hoopla, like, oh my God, Chris Aceto and Laura Carvel, because they were in the books and stuff. And at the time, you know, the magazines were like, you were a star if you were in the books. So they came through, and he came to take a look at me, and, you know, he called Lou and said, oh, the kid looks pretty good. And he wrote out a little diet for me. And man, I took that diet home. I stuck it on my refrigerator, and I was like, I felt so honored that this guy came down and took the time with me. And he was like, you know, whatever, told Lou the kids whatever. And like, I remember time progressed. Probably 6 months went by, and you know, he came back down because it was like, oh, Chris is going to come back through. He had to come through all the time to go to New York or something. And Chris came back, and he's like, holy shit, like, this kid made crazy improvements in 6 months just because I needed structure. So he wrote out like 6 meals a day. And I remember it was like egg whites, oatmeal. Meal 2 was like steak and potato. Meal 3 was chicken, baked potato. And I literally, honestly, Leo, I didn't deviate from the order of the schedule. So it was 6 meals.
Thank everyone who's on this channel, who is supporting. These times are really tough when I lost 2 accounts. So it is even more crucial for me to be able to sustain this, sending you to my link tree in order to order with my discount codes and support and subscribe to this channel and tell all your friends about it. It's very crucial to me and to the existence of this channel Thank you so much.
Meals, and exactly those 6 meals I never missed for like 6 months. And it was like, I remember the last meal was egg whites. It was 12 egg whites. And I made crazy improvements just on the nutrition. So that's why to this day, like I still talk about how important the diet is. I mean, I'm so rigid with my diet in particular. So he's like, man, this kid's gonna be Mr. Olympia.
Oh, he said that back then already? Wow.
Yeah, he said this kid's got the potential. So to be honest, like just before I get ahead, Chris Aceto took me under his wing and trained me with no financial discussion whatsoever. Chris Aceto trained me all the way through pro until he's like, and you know what Chris said to me? He goes, "You're gonna be so great someday. I know it will come back around." Meaning, like I know you'll be able to pay me someday because listen, I was broke, man. And he literally took. I remember like the first one I won the Night of Champions the first time in 2000. Like I finally could cut Chris a check. I won $15,000. I was able. He encouraged me. He made me buy my first house then. Immediately like with that money. And back then you could. I bought a house that I paid $218 for it, and I think I don't know what I even put down on it, but I was able to cut him a check out of a little money out of it, And that's really it all kind of started, man. Like Chris took me under, and then I started going back and forth to Maine, and we competed, at a couple local shows, and then I went to, she was guest posing. Laura was guest posing in Schenectady, New York, in 1993. I needed to qualify for teen nationals. Lou was calling me, being like, "You need to do teen nationals. You're at that level." And I'm like, "Really?" So I did this.
Is that the one where I think you have purple trunks or something?
No, that was later. So I did this local show. It was in New York. Lee Labrada was the guest poser, and I got to meet Lee. He was the first pro I ever met, like to that level, guest posing. I met Ron, I met a couple guys like before that. And I actually met Tony Freeman in my gym, which is crazy because he came to my gym as like, he was an amateur. And he came to my gym, and I remember seeing him. He was really big at the time, a lot bigger than I was, and eventually we ended up competing at nationals, and I had beaten him, whatever. So, but Chris, took me there. I won the teenage and I won the men's division in bodybuilding. And I qualified for teen nationals. I went to teen nationals, competed against Branch Warren, and he beat me in the overall. So I won the heavyweights, Branch won the light heavies. 1993 teen nationals. And this is where it all kind of started. So there was this misprint in the Boston Globe newspaper. And Chris Aceto saw it, and he's like, "Hey, there's a misprint for round trip tickets to California from Boston." And at the time, listen, it was me and my girlfriend where I was completely broke. I remember she was working 2 jobs, and I was working, like I said, just odd job security. I just graduated college with my associates, and I said, I want to do this. I did the teen nationals. I won. Chris is like, "I'm going out to the Mr. USA 1993. This was in July, so I graduated in June. I didn't even go to my graduation because I was training for teen nationals. I won teen nationals, and he's like, "There's this misprint. Take advantage of it. It's $99 round trip," so I was able to book 2 round trip tickets.
Do you know what it should have been?
Oh, it should have been like $230 or something like that, I remember.
Yeah.
So I was like, we're taking advantage of it. And I'm like, well, where are we going to stay? I'm like, who cares? Just get there. So we flew out, went to California, stayed at some little crappy, bad hotel on Lincoln. And I remember, like, there was no Ubers or anything like that. We had no money, right? Yeah. So we were walking to Gold's Gym, and it literally, I'm not kidding, it was like 2 hours walk from where we were, right? And but I didn't care. So me and my girl, we would literally go to Gold's Gym. I remember we got there, and I was walking around the gym, and I was like, Chris said, "Meet me there. I'll be there at this time," or whatever. And there was no cell phones or anything like that. It was like, okay, we called from a payphone or something, like, "Chris, we'll be there." And he was helping Mike Francois, I think, for that show. Chris Cormier won, but we got to see Gold's Gym Venice for the first time, walking through the gym, and Ed Connors pops up.
Yeah.
He's like, "Who are you?" He had been looking. There was a glass window that people probably didn't know that Ed could see down into the gym.
I think I know from where, yeah.
He saw me with the blonde. I had bleached blonde hair, and so he comes up to me. He's like, "Where are you staying?" And I said, "We're staying at this hotel in Lincoln." He's like, "Why the hell are you there?" He's like, grab your stuff, man. I'm going to have you come stay at my house. And you know what's funny is like, Ed was particular about, I had my girlfriend with me at the time, and for some reason he let us stay at his house for a couple of days. And, you know, we get to see the USAs and all this. And Ed was so nice. He took us to eat and whatever. And,
Usually he said no girls, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was only because he always said because he didn't want to be responsible if a woman got pregnant in his house, right? Because I was a kid, you know. I was just turned 20. Just turned 20. And I remember he was talking about Lee Priest, and Lee Priest was he was unbelievable, right? He had just turned 21 at Ed's house, so he's like a year older. And so we got to see the USA. Ed took me in, and he invited me to come back that fall. So this was July. And then, but I got to go in Gold's Venice, and like everybody was there. You wouldn't believe Flex Wheeler, obviously Cormier, and I mean every actor, Tommy Lee Jones. This is when like everyone was, Magic Johnson was there, and all these athletes, and I couldn't believe it. Like we sat there, honestly, like we were there for like 5-6 hours, and it felt like we were there for an hour, you know, but we worked out the whole time. Yeah. You know how it was when you first come to Gold's and you like just want to see everything. So next thing you know, Ed says, hey, come by and, you know, come back in the fall. So Ed invited me, I remember from Thanksgiving until Christmas of the end of 93. He said, come back and train and stay at my house and whatever. And that was when I said I'm going for it full time, because I got to train with the best. I stayed at Ed's house, you know, showed me what Gold's Gym was all about, and you know,
what do you mean by full time though? You couldn't afford just to do nothing. Right?
I was able to, like, I had worked the golf course job, so I got laid off because of the winters. Mm-hmm. So it worked out perfect because I was collecting unemployment, and I got to go to Ed's, you know, for that month because, you know, it was winter in Massachusetts. And I remember, you know, I came home at Christmas, and literally in that month, Leo, I put so much weight on. I was like, I came back and I was like, oh my God, California, it just makes you massive, you know? So I walked back into Gold's Gym, and like I was a superstar because the last day there, I got a picture in like Muscle Mag magazine. This guy came, he did like a news and views type column, and he's like, who are you? And I remember Steve Neese interviewed me, and he took a picture, and I had these I wore the spandex and all that, had the crazy legs. And I remember he said in the article, he's like, he looks like Craig Titus, but twice as big. And Craig Titus was like a big name then, right? He was on the come up.
So Craig immediately wanted to.
Well, yeah. So, and I was only 20 at the time. So that's when I said, you know, I came home and I said, I have to be a professional bodybuilder. I have to be.
Oh, before, did you believe in it, or was it like, maybe?
I didn't believe. I mean, when we were in the Teen Nationals, you know, and I met Porter Cottrell there, and like Dave Lieberman was the guest poser, who's a good friend of mine now, promote shows. I guess, you know, you have a dream, but you don't know what your potential is. I mean, as a teenager, I'm looking at Dorian Yates in the books, thinking that's Mr. Olympia, and I'm like, I'm not close to that, right? So it's like way out of reach. And, you know, Ed said, you know, when he's telling me about Lee Priest versus me, and Lee Priest is, you know, the biggest freak ever. I mean, he had everything, and he was already a pro. They granted him pro status just because he won the Australia so many times. You know, Ed made it happen, got him a contract with Weider right away. So for me, bro, I was just like, whatever. I just didn't think. But when I came back from California, I said, I really want to pursue this. And Chris thought it was a good idea. I mean, Chris was kind of, you know, you can be great at this, but, you know, he knew I was a ways away. But I'll tell you, man, I made an impact, and I told everyone I'll be back in a couple years when I'm 22. I'm going to come back to California. I'm going to win a show here, because at the time you had to do a show that gave you publicity. If I did one in Massachusetts, it might not have given me the publicity, because the magazines were all based in California at the time, and all the photographers were there. And I had this photographer, Irvin Gelb, who I have to give a shout out to, because
I met him.
Yeah, he's a great
friend of Ed's.
Yeah, so he said, you know what, when you're ready, when you get ready for your show, when you're 22, I'll fly out and I'll stay with you, and I'll get a lot of pictures. He shot for Muscle Mag. He was smart, because he was way ahead of thinking, like, okay, this kid's going to be really good. He's got a good look. I had the blonde hair and whatever. I was very marketable. So he's like, I'll come and stay with you. And he was in cahoots kind of with Chris Aceto and stuff. So I just went to work, man. I just went to work those 2 years, and I put on so much size. After the teen nationals, man, I remember I sold my Jeep. I had a Jeep at the time that I was paying for, and I just suffered. Me and my girlfriend, we shared a car, and every dollar I made just working odd jobs, I put into my food and the training of bodybuilding. And I came back and I did the Tournament Champions 1995, and that's when I had the purple trunks. I was 22. And I smoked the show. I flew out to California at the time. I had a guy that was kind of helping me, like kind of sponsoring me. He had a local business guy. So he flew out with me. Chris Aceto flew out with me. My sister came. My girlfriend at the time, who I ended up marrying, I have to give a lot of credit to her, my ex-wife.
And your parents, your parents also supported you? Or were they still like, oh,
yeah,
what's he doing?
My mom
or,
a little bit. My dad really was but my dad helped me for
Yeah.
the Teen Nationals ticket. He helped me pay for. But my mom helped me because she actually, my stepfather was in the military. My stepfather Paul, he was in the Army, so they actually lived on base, and they got food from the PX, and it was a lot cheaper, right? So they would help me buy chicken, and then I got deals like this is when I was buying meat from the butcher, and I was buying a whole cow at a time and 140 pounds of chicken at a time. But the guy Bruce, who was kind of like my sponsor at the time, like he kind of helped me a little bit. He's a good friend of mine. We trained together and stuff. He really pushed me and guided me in a business sense, but he also helped me financially because he had a heating air conditioning business. So he was kind of my backbone at that point. And, like I said, he flew out, and man, I landed my first Muscle and Fitness cover, got to meet Joe Weider. He offered me a contract. I said no, because I just was like, you know what, I wanted to get more money. He offered me like $2,000 a month. And I'm like, no, that's not enough money. Because I was getting by. And I was like, it was hard for me not to take it, because you walk into Joe Weider's office, and he offered me the deal. But I got to spend time with Ed and everything. And like I said, that show, if you ask me the biggest highlight of my career, you're going to think Olympias or 09 comeback or whatever. It could have been that Tournament of Champions, because that made me. Like, I remember like Paul Dillette was there and Flex Wheel, and when I came out on stage, everyone's like, oh my goodness. Like, I just had...
So that was like also mentally your turning point?
Oh, it was, I knew I was going to be, at that point, I knew I was going to be a star. Like...
So then you already believed you could even win an Olympia?
I knew at that point, everyone was coming at me. They wanted me to do the Nationals, because that was in August of 95. Nationals were in October, and Don Long was favored. Don Long ended up winning the 95 Nationals. It was in New Orleans. And, Tom Prince at this time, who is now no longer with us, he became like kind of my buddy, because he was on the come up too, and we kind of ran in the same circles. He was in Florida, but like he had been one of these guys people are talking about too. So somehow we got put together. We roomed together at like the Night of Champions, which is now the New York Pro. Like, we got to spend some time, and he was massive, and I was massive. But I was just gung-ho about bodybuilding, and I waited. I said, I'm going to come back and win the Nationals. So I won the Nationals in 96 the next year. I took the whole year to train for it and won my class there against Tom. Tom got second. And I got my pro card right away, and Weider paid me a contract, doubled up the money. I got $4,000 a month at the time. Back then, that was pretty decent money. I took the deal.
Probably like 8 now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And it was, for a 23-year-old kid, I was, I was doing okay. And I was starting to get guest postings. I was guest posting for like $500 or $1,000. I started a mail order that Chris Aceto put me on, which was only through the mail. So I had like a P.O. box in the magazine, because we didn't have, remember, no internet yet. No jcutler.com. And that's how I started monetizing like my career. Chris Aceto was doing a pretty good mail order. He had books and stuff like that, like cookbooks. And so I had an 8x10 in a shirt. My uncle has a screen printing company back there. So he made my t-shirts, and then I found a place to make like 8x10s. And literally people were buying my stuff through the mail, seeing me in the books, because I started getting some articles like that Tournament of Champions I won got me my first Muscle and Fitness cover. I was 22. And man, I had made it.
And when you did your first Olympia, and I think you got 15th
99
or 16th?
Yeah,
15th?
99.
Was that like, oh my God, like I'm like all the way? Like,
I was devastated.
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to remember, I won everything up until then, and then I went to my first pro show. I tanked. They started this diuretic testing, and my body was never really great responsive without diuretics, to be honest. So, and I competed at that in, Night of Champions in 98. So I took basically 97 off. I turned pro in 96. And I came back, 98. And guess who was in the show? Ronnie Coleman won and Kevin Lambrone was second.
Yeah.
Mike Martiraza was third. I was in 11th. I actually tied with Milos, and he got the bump, so he finished 11th, and I was actually 12th. He reminds me all the time.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say, he's
so I tried going in the show without, for the first time ever without a diuretic, and it just didn't work. I was waterlogged, and so I'm like, that's never going to happen again. So next thing you know, I got ready for '99 season, and I qualified for the Olympia going to the Ironman. I got third, and the Arnold Classic I got fourth. And that's when I competed against Milos. We talk about it all the time. He beat me at the Ironman. He was second, and I got third. And then at the Arnold Classic, I ended up fourth, and he was fifth. And so I qualified because back then the top three qualified. Yeah. So I went to the Olympia with high expectations. I'm like, I'm going to get called out with Ronnie. I was doing all these photo shoots for Flex. Remember, I was a Weider athlete at this point, so I show up there, even Chris Aceto, even Kevin Lambrone was like looking at me at the photo shoot like, oh my gosh, it's like 2 weeks out of the show. And he's like, this kid's unbelievable, and he's a front runner for the show. Well, I show up at the show and I don't get any calls with anyone, which was like, I think it was a lot of robbery, to be honest. Like, I thought I looked really good. If you look back in the footage of '99 Olympia, I was pretty damn good there. I was 25 years old. Just not young muscle, and I was devastated. I sat in the room after the show with Chris and my wife at the time, and I'm like, am I just not good? For the first time ever. That was probably the lowest point.
And what did he say? You're 25, you got
keep
going? Or?
Chris was like, he just I don't understand it. He said, dude, he asked my ex-wife, he's like, is Jay just not good? Am I not seeing it? Because he's my coach, Yeah. And she's like, I don't understand it. So I'm like, whatever. And at the time, the funny thing is this was a huge turning point for me because for so long, Joe himself, had asked me to be in California. And I wanted to be, I was working close with Bruce, who had the business and whatever. And he's like, I don't think you should move to California. It's not a good place for you. You need to be here and focused on it. He built a crazy home gym and everything, like 2,000 feet. And I had Body Master, Hammer Strength had just launched. I had iCarrion in there, AFS. I had Flex equipment, everything. I handpicked equipment, which everyone does now for the perfect gym, and I had that at home. So I was training for like 96 Nationals. I trained there, all the Ironman, everything, my first Olympia. And then, I had this wake-up vision of like, I'm moving to California. I'm finally going to do it. So after I had placed third and fourth at those shows in the spring, Arnold Classic, Ironman, I had gone to California for photo shoots. It was financed for me to come out through the books. And I looked at a place in Orange County. I put a deposit on a place in Aliso Viejo at an apartment. And I said, I did a 6-month lease. So finally I was making Joe's wish come true that I was going to be there available for the books. Because at the time it was very important for you to be paid by the magazines to be available. And I was like, you know what, being in Massachusetts, I wasn't available. So my wife and I moved there to Aliso. We moved it right around Thanksgiving of '99. And I made a pact. As soon as I landed, I started training for the Night of Champions in 2000. And man, in 6 months, my physique made drastic changes. And I won my first pro show, 2000 NOC in May. Went to the Olympia, got 8th. I went on a Euro tour directly after, and no one else went on that tour but me and Coleman.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And I got second to Coleman. Dennis James was there, a couple of other guys, but I was 8th, and no one in between first and 8th went besides Coleman. So it was like kind of like, it was kind of weird because the tour is, you're already kind of set up to do as well as you place at the Olympia unless someone was really off. So it worked out so well, so it closed the gap and I was able to stand next to Ronnie, and for the first time Chris could see that and said, you're going to beat this guy. And I finished second to Ronnie at 3 events, and I finally made enough money. I'll be honest, that was a huge turning point for me too, because I had put myself a little bit in debt. So all the people that think I always had money, I remember I had a $14,000 credit card debt from when we moved to California. At the time, I got a big raise. I was making like $100,000 a year back in '99, which was like pretty good money, because I was still residualizing with the mail order and some guest appearances on top of that. But I had debt. And I remember, getting 8th at the Olympia and then going on the tour 3 stops. I think I collected like $30,000 over a 2-week period. I remember I cut one check, that 14 grand of that credit card debt, and honestly, never had any debt since. That was 2000. So I bought my house, Night of Champions victory, I had a home, which Chris Aceto made me do. And from that time forward, I just started, socking money away. And when I got on that tour and I placed that second to Coleman, I was like, I'm going to take the whole year in 2000 to 2001, and I'm going to train just for the Olympia, because top 10 qualified you for the next year.
Oh, okay.
Then.
Didn't they even move it back to top 3 now? They had
Yes,
top
but
5,
top
and now it's
10
top 3.
qualified, because there
yeah.
weren't that many shows.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can sit out the whole year. And at that time, I left Weider and I signed a deal with a company called ISS Research, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Got a bump in money. And they allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do. They're like, listen, we just want you to do guest appearances. We don't care how you place or whatever. And at the time, I'm like, maybe bodybuilding's not going to be my priority as far as being Mr. Olympia. Like, I don't know how good I'm going to be, but you know what? I'm going to go for broke. From 2000 to 2001, Chris is like, I want you to just train twice a day, but I want you to eat 1 junk meal a day, because your metabolism's so crazy, because you train so hard. So I literally had In-N-Out Burger every day, every night, from 2000 to 2001, okay, till I started my prep 16 weeks out.
Did you still do the high volume there? How did you split that?
I was training like a maniac, but I trained twice a day.
For like 1.5 hours?
Yeah.
Twice? Yeah.
It's
And
what
did
I
you
did.
take naps?
I slept. I ate, slept, and trained. At that time, I was financed. Now I was doing really well financially, and I came into 01.
You didn't know rest days? Or
No,
like
I
one a week?
did. I did 2 days a week. So
Yeah.
I trained like on a 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off schedule. So I trained like twice a day, and however I grouped my body parts. I remember I did quads one day, I did chest and biceps, and then shoulders and triceps another day. But it worked out to be like I always took a day off after legs and after back, because those were my highest volume body parts. And I came in 01, man.
And the reason you figured out that for you it's the volume training was by trial and error? Yeah.
Trial and error. And heavy duty was popular at the time, because the Yates was obviously the guy. And then he retired at
But you
98.
tried that and was like, it's not for me? Or?
I didn't really try it. I just, I'd been making so much great progress. I'm like, Chris is like, why change it, And, he didn't, he may say he doesn't watch guys training, but he would always suggest things. And I just watch people, but like, when you're the kid coming up and you're like bigger than everyone else, just needs refinement. I mean, what am I going to do differently? And it wasn't drugs, or it was just the food. Like, Chris was crazy with the food. Like, he would manipulate my diet and be like, my highs and lows swings were everything. Like, and I got lean from shows going like, so my low days might be 300 grams of carbs, and then my high day go all the way to 1,200 grams of carbs. And that big swing, it like just eats the body fat off, especially with the metabolism. So, and I trained like a maniac, and it wasn't about cardio. Like, he hated cardio. Like, he said no cardio, just so training twice a day would burn off a lot of those calories. It was so complex. Like, even going back now, I'd have to look at journals to say exactly how it was, but like, my body was just clicking, man. When your body's clicking like that, and you're at that young age, and I was, 27 when I placed second at my first Olympia 01, very controversial that year. And I was so happy to be second and stand next to, but I knew I could beat Coleman, and Chris, I remember, was crying at the time, and I don't know if you know the history, but Chris ended up with cancer at that time. He had skin cancer, he was like they said like he almost wasn't going to make it, and he kind of hid it from me just because I was so on top of the world for that show. Like, we have so much history, we're family, Chris and I, and just bodybuilding. Like, he just always advised me the best for my body, and it's just really crazy how he can kind of manipulate everyone on a different type of program just by like reading how that person reacts from certain foods. Like I was a high carb eater and I ate low protein, and you know, for these people that say like you can't get ripped like using protein shakes and stuff, I used like 4 out of 6 meals in '01 were protein powder. I would eat carbs with them, but I remember at the time, and that wasn't isolate protein or anything, it was like a concentrate protein, like a blend. And like I just, dude, when your body's clicking, you know. And I came into '01, almost coulda, shoulda won, and you know, the rest is kind of history. I never looked back after that. It was just, you know, the climb up to the top, man. It's just was just like this, you know. I was second, winning Arnold's, and you know, came to Olympia and won in '06, and you know, obviously, you know, won for a couple years, lost to Dexter, and you know, the whole.
In over a decade of coaching, what I learned is you have to be able to ask the right questions and then know the proper answers. That's what I do best. If you want to find out more, get one of my 2 books I wrote on training, endocrinology, peptides. Sign up if you want to join my coaching. Links in the description below, or just message me on Instagram.
I switched to Hany Rambod in 2009. I mean, we can talk a lot about that, but bodybuilding, man, like I knew when I did that tour with Ronnie that's when I first realized, holy shit, like I might be able to win this thing. Like that was the first time I actually thought that. I thought I could be decent. But when you stand next to Coleman and like the guy that's kind of like winning at the time, and he's Mr. Olympia, like in '01, to watch how I compared, if you go back and look at the pictures, you know, my physique was just, I mean, Ronnie wasn't at his best, but man, like when a guy's off, you know, I think I could have won that one, you know.
And what would you say was the first Olympia, then kind of like the craziest one, or was it more the comeback?
'06 was a cool win. But I was lost in like how Ronnie was going to react, because he was so mad, like on stage, like disappointed, like hurt. You know, I had so much respect for him. So
You
I
almost
had to
felt
wear
bad winning?
Well, I felt bad winning.
Yeah.
You know, does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, how am I going to handle his reaction? Because remember, he fell on the floor all those years with the victories, and like I was standing there kind of like, oh, what do I do, right?
You kind of took everything from him. You probably felt
Yeah,
like that.
so I'm like, he was going for record 9,
Yeah.
and so it wasn't a like ideal situation for me. Although I'm like, I remember not sleeping for a week, bro. I was so happy. Like, you know, after losing 4 times in a row, and like where I come from, and like the whole world, like I felt like I did so much. I conquered so much, because like Sean and Kevin and Flex and all these guys, they all got to second, but they never overcame the major hurdle in the winning. So I kind of gave it was like my dedication to all those guys. But then, you know, losing to Dexter in '08, and then like being at a crossroad with Chris's coaching, and like I felt like it got to the point where I can say this now, that number one, I had a lot of people around me that were always in my ear about maybe you should try this or try that. And Chris was very turned off by that. Like, he's like, there's too many people in your house. There's too many people like with their 2 cents. Like, we done this along the way. Like, you need to get these people out of here. And I didn't do that. You know, because I had an entourage. And I started to doubt his abilities in a sense. And if I wasn't going to listen, it's hard to have someone in your corner and like kind of fix things when you're half doing another thing. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay.
I coach people too.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then it's like, this guy said that, and this guy said that, and you need, like,
So-
I need to take Anadrol before the show to get full. I'm like, oh my
It got
God.
to the point where
Yeah.
I did deviate a little bit from his theories. Like, okay, do 30 minutes of cardio and do an hour, you know, and then I'd be like, well, I can make it up with food. You know, you just can't, once you start going, your body just starts going in a different direction. So I think there was just that crossroad of like, I'm smarter than the coach, and then, you know, he just couldn't figure it out. And I just like, he's like, maybe you just need to do something different. And I took that as like, okay, it's an exit to like maybe try something new. And at the time I thought he was going to retire. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to come back from this. And at that point, to be honest, man, like not to sound like arrogant, but I was in a good financial position where I had a lot of, I always had stuff going on. I moved to Vegas for the real estate. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, but like money was never an issue by this point, right? It wasn't like, bodybuilding was financing me, but I had created so much more opportunity that I knew I'd be okay. So the contracts and all that stuff didn't, and I was paid very well at that time. I felt like even if I didn't compete, I would still get paid. Does that make sense? And it probably was the truth, to be honest. But
I mean, you see it right now.
Yeah, well, I know it's what I mean, but I'm 50 years old.
No, but so, you're not competing.
No,
but you're still like.
Yeah. But I was, I that was still early, right? It was still. I was 30, mid 30s, right? 35 or something like so. Somehow, Hany checked on me because I was really down, man. It was a really down point, and the whole world turned against me. And, if you know how bodybuilding is, like, you're great when you're on top, but when you fall down, like Dexter beat me, and Phil was on his way up, and like, okay, Jay's done, So you start to wonder, fuck, am I done? Like, you start to, like, that gets in your head a little bit. And, like, I'm the strongest-minded individual you'll ever meet. But at the time, I'm like, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I don't love this anymore. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I just don't have the drive like I had. And
where do you think that drive came from? You think you just had it in you? I
had it because of the, growing up in the family, being self-sufficient, working in the concrete. I was upbringing was like blue collar. So like nothing was difficult for me. Like bodybuilding was cake, being on a diet and not cheating and, putting that diet on the refrigerator, following it to a T and not following, I had like a strict order of life, right? That's how I did things. So somehow Hany and I ended up in conversation. He checked on me, hey, I hope you're okay, out of his heart. And we weren't super close. He was a Ronnie Coleman camp guy. Like he loved Ronnie. And somehow like, I'm like, hey, he's like, you can do this, man. He kind of just said to me, like, don't think it's done. Like you still have the tools. At the time, like he wasn't a coach of like, he hadn't trained any greats. I think I was his first Olympian at the time when he did coach me in 09. Him on that? Well, I don't know. He kind of, we had conversations. Like, I'm like, hey, can I bounce some ideas? I'm thinking about making a comeback and try to win this thing back. I know it's never been done. He said, yeah, of course. Somehow we linked up and he said, hey, try this FST7. And we started doing these things. And Phil Heath was, he was third that year. I lost to Dexter. And like somehow we linked up. And in January, we were filming like the FST7 videos at my house. And, I had the crazy house in Vegas, like I had everything pretty much, I had the perfect life. And so we started, kind of like working on some off season. And I remember even like getting into July, bro, I didn't even say like, I'm going to work with you. And then somehow like 10 weeks out, I'm like, hey, will you coach me into the show? I was kind of going to do it on my own. He's like, yeah, no problem. So we just started full tilt, man, and came back in 09 and smoked everybody.
Two-time Mr. Olympia, Cutler.
Branch was second that year, and Dexter fell to third, and arguably is that the best physique we've seen. But man, that catapulted me like it was like starting all over again. At the time.
It's so funny because I remember that was kind of almost my first real interaction with bodybuilding. It's almost my sister, and she had this guy in school that was like huge. Found out later, like at 15, he was like full on steroids, huge
really?
Guy. But on Facebook, his name was Jay Cutler. I was looking up like, who's Jay Cutler? And that's so funny. Like now I sit here with Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
And how was that when? Because you competed until like 13. Then did you then like didn't want to let go or?
So 09, happened, and it's crazy, man. Like I was splitting time at the time. Like I was starting to really like bodybuilding. Kind of, I was booked every week. I mean, I've been traveling a lot, but like the 09 comeback gave me a lot of opportunity. And I actually got, I met with Stan Lee, who created all these characters, right? He Superman and like or whatever, Batman and everything, the Hulk, Incredible Hulk. And I actually met with him, and he wanted to create this character. I actually got the Hercules film that The Rock did that they were going to finance. It was going to be like Lionsgate was going to actually take control of that film. And like had all these opportunities, but that '09 comeback, man, it just catapulted me. I was spending time in California. I was training at Gold's Venice on and off. I was still living in Vegas, but you know, it was one of those things where I remember sitting with Hany and saying, you know what, we're never going to duplicate. You're never going to be better than this. We actually said that. And I probably should have quit then. But I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make another run at 10, and I end up winning in 10. Phil was knocking at the heels then. But, you know, 11 happens. I go through a divorce at the time, right? A lot of bad things had started steering in my personal life. And then I tore my bicep 3 weeks out, and I end up losing to Phil and lost the title. So that's kind of like the year that I think I could have been my best that year. But the bicep 3 weeks out, which I thought was a slight pull, ended up being a tear, and it was just a mess by the time I got on stage. And Phil won. It was probably his best ever. And then I have to have surgery, and I'm like, you know what, I'm done. I just went through the divorce. I started living, you know, enjoying my life. And when I was 38 at the time, and you know, just I want to focus on business and whatever else. And you know, I remember, you know, I had a contract with Muscle Tech at the time, and I walked away from that deal because I wanted to start my own. And you know, I sat out 2012, and then I decided to come back in 13. Just, you know, I'm like, you know what, I'm healthy, I'm feeling good again. And I was, you know, launched the supplement company, you know, Cutler Nutrition and all that. I'm like, it'd be good for the brand and good for the fans, and I'll come back and do it. But I just didn't give myself enough time, because after going back to general life, after losing in 11 and sitting out and having the surgery and repairing my bicep, I just lost a lot of density, man. And of course, you know, you fall that far behind. That's the problem with bodybuilding. And I tell this, like, once you miss a year or two, it's like the Jeremy Buendia effect, like where it just, it evolves no matter what you think. And I looked in the mirror in 13, and like, I was like, I'm going to smoke this show. And I stood up there and I looked down the line, and that was Phil Heath's, like, he won call out year. I said, holy shit, I'm just overwhelmed in this lineup. You know, I finished 6th, which, I mean, I beat Rolly and Rami in that show, which I don't know if I should have. But I didn't beat Roden, I didn't beat Dexter, I didn't beat Phil. I mean, a lot of great guys, but I realized that was my swan song of, like, didn't have the heart to train like that anymore. And that's, you know, but it was good to come back and be healthy. And you know, and I don't think people remember 2013. I think they remember the years. Actually, yeah. You know what I mean?
That's true. I think it's good because a lot of people can't let go, and you were kind of.
I was 40.
You was kind of.
I turned 40 in August. The show is in September, so I had just turned 40, and I knew it was going to be my last. I mean, I thought 11 was going to be my last title at 5 wins. I actually had a mantle in my office made for the 5th Sandow. And I had the box on the top and everything, and it just didn't go that way. So 5 titles was my goal. I know every Olympia guy says, "Oh, I'll just keep going," but I had 5 on my idea of winning, and I finished with 4. And but I knew 13 was like, and they gave me the mic, like Bob gave me the mic to make a farewell speech. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave it open just because. I'm not ready to do this. I didn't have the emotion at that point. And, you know, obviously Phil was winning at that. He was coming into his own. And I just wasn't fun for me anymore. And it's really hard to admit that because I love bodybuilding so much. But I just realized at 40, man, waking up every day, like my aspirations were just different, man. Like, you know, becoming out of a marriage and like realizing that there's way more to life than, you know, living inside a box. And when I talk about that boxy lifestyle, and I try to tell the generation now, I feel you have to be really selfish to be great at something. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether you paint, whether you go to school, professional athletes, like, we have to be locked in. And I treated bodybuilding, I lived in that box. It was like eat, sleep, train, no distractions, don't bother me. Like, whatever happened in the real world, I didn't give a damn about who was winning any games or any of that stuff, because if it didn't relate to me having success in the gym or leading towards the stage, I wanted nothing to do with it. And it sounds so secluded, but I did that when I trained for the shows. But once I got done with the shows, I focused on business, and I was the best at it. I was the best at the business because I built everything on great relations, but whenever I made time to do what I set out to do, it was always at full capacity. Because of the bodybuilding, I was so locked in to be able to eat, sleep, and train perfect that when I handled business and I handled going on the guest appearances or negotiating deals, I was so precise with everything. I never made mistakes. And I feel like those relationships and that work ethic gave me what I have today. And it's still that way.
You just said that there's so much more to life, and you asked me in the elevator if I'm happy. I'm really happy. I love my life.
Yeah.
Are you happy? And if you say yes, how did you find out what makes you happy, or have you maybe not found out yet?
Training at leisure now, the gym is still the best part of my day, I'll be honest. You go back and forth with so many different ways of life. Remember, I was in a relationship for my whole bodybuilding career, and at that point, that woman was kind of the backbone of what I do. And now, I've experienced that. I'm in another relationship with Angie now, and people know us from social media, and she's the rock in what I do, right? She's there for everything. So I think relationships are having a partner that I believe to be really successful, you have to have a strong person behind you. Now, whether that's a female or a family member or a best friend or whatever. I'm very introverted in a sense. I have a very small circle, and I'm a workhorse. So anyone that's with me has to realize that the work comes first. That's what my dad instilled upon me. And unfortunately, it's a good and a bad trait. So I still have this mindset, when I wake up every day, my structure's still set like the bodybuilding. I get up and exercise and I eat and whatever, but I go right into business. So I have a hard time shutting off that switch. But at the same time, when you can shut off that switch and you have a partner that allows you to live your life to the fullest and gives you the most joy, that's an important thing for me. And that's what I have with Angie. She has the understanding, and it's hard to find a person that will deal with that, right? But you say more to life, it's the traveling experience things and not worrying about how many macros are in this or that, preparing your food everywhere you go, and going outside the box and saying, well, I don't have to go to the gym today, and I don't have to train to this capacity because now I can go out, I can ride a bike, or I can snow ski because that's going to burn too many calories, or risk me at this or that. I can't do anything too active. It's just the little things like that.
Would you say this life right now, the way you live, makes you happier than?
Of course.
Yeah.
I would say it is, but you know what? The life I'm living now is happiest because I was able to prepare myself and put myself in the position. I just left an expo. We're here.
Yeah.
I spent 2 days, 5 hours a day, nonstop. And I'm more motivated to go home and work out and continue thriving, building my business. And I do this again next week. I go to Steve's gym. We have a seminar out there. But I go home right after to see my mom, and my mom's 83, who was there with me for the beginning of this journey. So I said, when I quit, I need to focus on the real things. And it's mainly family, to be honest. When you look around and it's all said and done, man, what's there? Is it, people look at success and they try to, you go on media now and everyone's they're flying private planes, or they have nice cars, or they have this, or they wear nice jewelry, and does any of that stuff matter more than the moments that you share? I watched this reel on Dana White saying all that shit doesn't matter. It's the only things you'll remember in 4 years or 6 years or 8 years are the memories that you created with the people that you love the most, or you So like I'm gonna look at this weekend. It's great with the fans and everything, but like I was able to spend time with Guy's sister Nino, and I'm like manager Matt. Like we got to go out and eat with the girls and everything. So like there's a lot of great moments. We had some good laughs. We trained the last couple mornings at like 7 in the morning, which I never do. I trained faster the last 2 days, which I'd never recommend. And it's just like those moments. We're gonna talk about it for 4 years down the road. We were telling stories from like 4 years ago. So those are things you remember the most. It's not necessarily like the material things, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I always think it's human interaction, because we're like 9 billion on the planet. If there was no one around, everyone would be miserable. So it's all about human interaction.
Yeah, it is.
And I feel also, if you bodybuild and you do something only for yourself, it like for me, it gives me so much, like it's selfish, and at the same time, it's giving. When you have an impact on people and you do something good, it gives you way more reward than winning anything.
But if I can go to the amusement park and take 10 people with me, it's going to be a lot better than just Angie and I going. We're going to create memories. But like if we can go with a bunch of people and like there's circumstance that happens, either it's good or bad, like this, like we tell these stories all the time. Like, someone's on their way, they get a flat tire and they have to go through, they have to like chase someone down to change the tire. Like I always throw these things out there, but it's always like different scenarios that you talk about or remember. You know what I mean? Like running out of gas. I mean, the days I used to run out of gas all the time, and we all have, right? And
I when we went to Vegas last time, my wife wanted to try to get an electric car.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the story. Yeah. Like, we're super brave.
Yeah.
We're taking electric cars to Vegas. And of course, we start charging it.
Yeah.
Like 90 miles out, whole thing shuts down.
Oh no.
And we had to get towed, and then they towed us to the wrong place. And then we had to get towed again. And then we had to leave the car there and get a rental car. Oh my God.
See, your story will tell people never to rent an electric car to go to Vegas.
No.
So that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm able to tell these experiences, and it's so cool because the people come up today and they're like, tell me what it felt like when beating Ronnie Coleman. And I had it, like, it brings me back to those, it's a moment.
Yeah.
It wasn't about winning the 200,000 or the Hummer trucks I won at the Arnold Classic. Those are great. When I walk through and, you come in my home office and I have those Hummer trucks up there and I'm like, I won these at the Arnold Classic, but I bought real estate with them and I was able to financially reward myself. It was like, man, I remember Arnold giving me that Hummer truck on stage, at the time, 2002, and I was the first one to get an H2 Hummer, and like feeling so cool, like that Arnold Schwarzenegger was giving me a prize, like the guy that I watched in Commando and Terminator 2, and when I was in high school, I was my senior year summer, walking into Terminator 2 at the movie theater in Leominster, Mass, and walking out of there being like, I have to be a bodybuilder because Arnold looked so jacked in the movie, and it was just amazing to me.
I'll never forget Arnold saying he's proud of me. He saw me train at Gold's for 4 years, getting bigger and better. And
because you're from Austria?
And then like he sometimes has me pose for him. It's like side chest and whatever.
Yeah.
And then I went out, I think that was a year ago, and he said he was proud of me. And I'm like, I'll never forget that. And when you're on your deathbed, that's what you...
Of course.
What matters what you think about.
Like your heroes.
You're not going to think about you dying like, oh, that Hummer.
It's amazing because, when I was up and coming, like, I looked at the Bob Paris, but to be honest, like, inspirations for me was like Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Me too. I tried to get a split every day in my bunk bed. I tried to get higher on the ladder.
But it's crazy because I got to meet both those guys. Both said to me, we're big fans. Like, those are guys I followed when I was 12.
Van Damme hit on my
Rocky
wife.
IV, you really?
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to see him at Gold's. There's a video on my YouTube where he got to interact, and I remember he came up to me in Gold's parking lot, and like, I'm a huge fan, and Sylvester came up to me at the Arnold Classic in 04 and was like, I'm a huge fan, invited me to Vegas, the Contender, and like, these were my heroes when I was 12, man. These are the moments that, like, that's what makes bodybuilding. When Arnold now, like, FaceTiming me, I want to give you the Lifetime Achievement Award, and telling me this, like, person to person, I mean, I'm like, man, if my dad could see this now, like, after sitting at my brother's, sitting and watching these movies. I remember sitting watching, like, Rocky and, Commando and Kindergarten Cop and Twins. Like those are all my kids' those are movies when I was a kid. And then Bloodsport I watched 100,000 times, And I remember thinking Van Damme was so crazy in shape where he was just a smaller, lean guy. Like, man, like that's when you know you made it. Like that's why, like I can sit here and get more excited. Like look how excited I'm about talking about that rather than winning the Olympia. And because once you get there, to be honest, I looked around and I said, this is it. This is the feeling I got when I won the biggest title that I trained my whole life for. And I thought there would be more.
Yeah, you always think that because it takes so long.
And I'm like, okay, like I figured the whole world would come around and be like, Jay Cutler's Mr. Olympia. And it's like, you wake up the next morning and you're like, okay, is the phone going to ring more? Are people going to be, is the news station going to be at my house? And then you realize, man, like, damn, I won the Olympia, but like only so much of the world knows. And then of course, listen, it was still fantastic. Like, I mean, the media channels, but man, if I had social media today, I look at like a Bumstead who's got that crazy publicity. What would me and Ronnie Coleman's careers be like right now if we started that battle during this era? Can you imagine how much recognition we would be getting worldwide?
Yeah, that was another thing I was wondering. What did you like better about bodybuilding? Let's say 90s, 2000s.
It was mysterious.
And now?
It was mysterious, but I'm happy because listen, you watch me in my old videos. I was a robot. I was super introverted. I didn't talk. I was locked in. I don't know how good I would be at putting a camera in front of me and filming. And I remember Mitsuru would come shoot battle for the Olympias and my DVDs and I'd be like, don't ask me questions, don't talk to me until we're outside of the gym. And I feel like today's society, they want us here, like the thought process. Like look at Sam Sulek's videos, right? I mean, he's a wonder on social media right now. And he kind of talks and like walks his way as he's driving to the gym and he does his training, talks a little bit, so he's interactive in that sense. And I feel like society wants to know all the answers now. They don't want any mysterious way to get to, they want to know every single detail on how to train their back, how to feel in between the sets, how to breathe. When you cook your food, they want to know exact macros. Where Chris Aceto would write, eat, 12 egg whites and a cup of oatmeal, and I'd just say, okay. I didn't ask like, okay, how do you break this down? What does it do? Why am I eating egg whites, not chicken breast? Like that stuff comes later, but like you just listen to what your coach tells you. You don't have to know the insides and outs of everything because, most people like to hire you as a coach now, and then 6 months later, they're the coach. You know what I mean? They're coaching someone, right?
That's so true, yeah.
So I just let the experts be experts at what they do, man. I was great at lifting weights, man. I was great at lifting weights, and it was great to have people coach me. I feel like I was coached by probably the two best guys in the industry. And in 13, I went back to Chris Aceto, by the way. I did Hany for a couple years, and then I went back 3 years. I did Hany, and then I went back to Chris just for the final hurrah together. Just because we started the journey together, I wanted to kind of finish it that way, just out of respect. And I felt like, and Hany asked me like, "Hey, why'd you go back?" I said, you know what? I mean, I didn't feel like I was going to put the type of training that Hany expected. I didn't want to disappoint him, and not to say Chris was more lenient, but Chris he wasn't a guy that was going to call me up and scream at me and be like, "You this, do that," where Hany was more like.
Major announcement, guys. The Peptide Encyclopedia is now to download. Check out the link in the description or the pinned comment, or go on my link tree. And the Anabolic Handbook is also available. All the compounds from A to Z broken down into benefits, downsides, administration, and so on. One favor I got to ask you, though, if you could subscribe to this channel to help it grow, to get the highest caliber people on this podcast, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. Now on with the episode. Go ahead, also check out my third book, Science of Aging.
is about understanding and really implying what you can do in order to age better and improve your health span. Check it in the link tree now.
Demanding, if that makes sense. Which, you know, and listen, you could say that's a good or a better, you know, worse
Different
or
people
better.
need
Yeah,
different
yes. And at
personalities.
the time, I just felt like there was only going to be so much effort. I knew my abilities were only so much, and he was really focused on Phil at the time. You know, Phil was the champ, and I really honestly didn't want to take from Phil either, in a sense. Like, I was like, hey, just let him have all Phil, and it's Phil's game now, right? But that's kind of where I left it. And, you know, Chris and I still have a great relationship. Hany and I still have a great relationship. But I think, you know, Hany's now retired. You see all these coaches now retiring. I mean, Chris is still in the game, right? Training Derek now.
Now they're coming all to Chris again.
Yeah. But I feel like he has a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. But, you know, listen, it's just about to say good eyes. I mean, you trained Urs, right in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he raves about Stefan, but I mean, I'm sure, like, he has to give some credit to the early years of starting off. Like, we all give credit in certain areas. I mean, I had a lot of that guidance from that Gold's Gym in Worcester, a bunch of, I don't want to say nobodies, but local people that gave me good eyes and kind of judged how I looked and gave me incentive to keep training harder. And, you know, like I said, I shout out that gym owner, because if he never comped me those memberships, you know, or let me clean that equipment late at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm not sure I would have been able to do what I did. I have to give Lou Zwick a big shout out for that. I have Ed Connors, Irvin Gelb.
Yeah.
I mean, all these guys, Joe Weider, you know, for moving me to California, convincing me to move and giving me more money. And I mean, everybody.
That's such an important message too, that no one's self-made.
No.
This self-made, when people say self-made, I'm like, just how ignorant are you? You don't see all your blessings you had. Like, tell that some guy in Africa that's like, you know, living in a tent, like, that you're self-made, and he couldn't do it. Like, you knew the right people too. Like, sure, you got to work, but you know, you have to make people realize.
I think there's
that,
still some luck
that
involved in everything we do. I mean, I hate to say that, because people are like, well, Jay, you worked really hard, but it just, situations put me, like, I mean, come on. Me walking into Gold's, Ed Connors happened to be there. Look, letting me stay at his place. I mean, like we talked about, no females allowed, but he let, you know, my female at the time stay there. Why am I the one exception?
If you're perseverant and you know what you want to do, you kind of create opportunities. They're not like thrown.
You do,
at
but
you
I
out of
wasn't.
nowhere, you know?
I'm never someone to take advantage or ask. Right. But I just, you know, I have a good belief in faith, you know, and, you know, I always had good morals, and, you know, I try to just treat people right. You know, that's the main thing with me, is my success has come from me taking time with people and being patient, listening to every person. I never judge a person by anything other than how they treat me, right? I try to give everyone the opportunity. I try to, like I said, it's just, you know, my time is important, but my time is necessary when it can be life altering for other people that I see. Because listen, I was that guy. And I remember so many times I was disappointed because people told me, you know, they'll spend time or they'll do something. You know how disappointing it is if someone doesn't follow through with their word on what they say they're going to do.
It happened to me 100,000 times.
It's just frustrating, you know?
Yeah.
Look at, you know, you're coming here from another country, right? And, you know, it's a different culture, right? But, but it's disappointing sometimes. I mean, so I take that into account, everything, and I think life, like I told you, is built a lot around relationships, and you just never know who you're going to cross, you know, and you know, these podcasts, like, I'm not a fan of doing too many of them, but like when you really get inside my head a little bit and I can talk about my emotions and moments, and if there's one takeaway that someone has that gives them some extra motivation or different thought processes on how they can better themselves or how it can be relative, and like, hey, that's kind of where I've been, and this is how Jay pivoted or whatever, that's all I ask for. That's why I do them, because I know it can mean a difference for people to really get deep inside someone and the stories that maybe someone hasn't spoken about before. You know, I've never really gone into total depth of certain things, you know. And listen, my childhood it affected me, man. Like my mom leaving when I was a young age. And listen, she's the greatest mom in the world. Like she came back, but like having that tension between my parents, like it affected me in a lot of ways, man. Like it made me like crawl up and not, like I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and you know, I was close to my dad. You know, my dad was my best friend. We had slept in bunk beds in my house. So a lot of people don't know. You know, I had, like I said, 3 brothers, 3 sisters. Man, we didn't live in a big home. So like in our living room, we had bunk beds, and I slept on the top bunk and my dad slept on the bottom. So I didn't have a bedroom. Like I'd change or whatever in a bathroom, but like our bedroom was our living room, my dad and I, and downstairs, you know, and that was okay.
You know, I'm so glad that I don't come from much. And I'm a little afraid if I have a child that I want to replicate that. You just as much as
you want
needed.
To give the necessities.
Just as much as needed.
Yeah.
And if like you just get rewarded for when you work for something, like because I see so many people nowadays, kids being entitled to all kinds of things, when it's like there's no right for this. You're just lucky.
Yeah, listen, I had, you know, my dad bought me an ATV when I was 12, but like we were only allowed 1 pair of shoes for school year, and I remember I think I had 1 pair of jeans, you know, and I would wear the jeans and only wash them when it was necessary, to the point, and I wasn't pampered in that sense with all these extra things when I was younger, because it wasn't that we were poor. It was more like, okay, the necessity things, but at the same time, like the busy lifestyle, like it was just kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that you only had 1 pair of shoes or whatever. Like it wasn't, I remember going grocery shopping with my dad, like we ate, you know, we had plenty of food, but we weren't allowed to have the sugar cereals and that kind of stuff. Like he did help us eat healthy, but man, when you're feeding 7 kids, that's a lot. Like, think about that, you know.
And
my
you
dad
don't get like child support like here, I guess.
No,
like in Germany or something.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I mean, but like my mom, like my dad raised us, man. Like he took care of us, but my brothers and sisters were forced to work when they were like 10, 11, 12. I mean, my brothers own a very successful concrete company, but like that's where like, okay, fend for yourself, kids. Like we just kind of had. At 11, I started working in the concrete, and I bought all my own clothes. I bought a car when I was 14. I didn't have a driver's license until I was 16, and I drove without a driver's license, and my dad was okay with it. My dad's like, just don't get caught. But I registered and insured a car when I was 14 years old. And I just drove because I just kind of lived like very self-sufficient, and I kind of made my own rules in a sense, but I can't ever say I was a bad kid. Like I still like knew what was right or wrong, but I'm like, I know how to drive, so I'm just going to drive. And I don't, you know, today, I don't know if that's like something that, we were in the country, man, like
Yeah,
the cops would pull me over if they knew me, like, oh, that's Bob Cutler's son. They would just put me in the back. Okay, let's just get the car home, or we're gonna follow you home. That's how it worked back then.
Yeah.
But today it's like, oh, you're going to jail. You know, you drive without a license, or you get a ticket.
The
or
culture
whatever.
has changed so much.
Yeah, like, but we were super country, and I mean, I'd ride my bike all over town, and you know, today I live a really great lifestyle, but you know, I still tried it. Like you walked in here, you said, "Are you tired?" And I remember sitting there, we just sat at dinner, you know, we ate across the street, and I said, you know, I want to do this podcast. And normally, like, after these expos, I'm like, oh, I sit in a room, and Angie would tell you, like, I don't want to talk. Because, you know, I've been, hey, how are you? Why are you here? You know, what motivates you? You're kind of burnt out, but I'm like, you know what? I knew this meant a lot, and I'm like, hey, I want to do this. I want to do this interview and kind of get into my head a little bit why I was here and thinking about it. I've been thinking about it all weekend, right? Since we spoke last week about it. And I thought this would be a unique opportunity because, listen, you know a lot of my life. You know a lot about, and you've interviewed people that are a big part of, like Steve Weinberg is one of my best friends, you know, and I'm there next week, and Ed Connors, like, you don't realize the impact Ed Connors has put on people's lives. Like we talk about Joe Weider.
I called the podcast. I named the podcast "Godfather
What?
of Bodybuilding"
Listen,
because I
you know,
feel like
Joe Weider was a huge figurehead, but if it wasn't for Ed Connors, I don't know where a lot of us would be. And listen, Ed doesn't like to take the credit. He said Jay Cutler might have been, and he says it in his book. He said, I think Jay Cutler would have done fine. But Ed doesn't understand the impact he's had on so many of us. And unfortunately, a lot of guys that have now moved on, passed on. But, you know, you talk about the greats like the Cenas and, you know, all these, like, the Ultimate Warrior, all these people that, like, he, like, impacted to the point where without Ed, we don't know where our careers would have
he
been.
told all these people that, you know, you can do something with this. Like, you have a talent, go for it. And I feel like maybe some of these people, like I think John Cena said that he would probably not have.
And you know what the
gone
funny
there.
thing is? I can't ever say Ed Connors, like I never went to Ed Connors for money. Ed Connors gave me a home to stay in, like, and it took us to dinner, gave us a gym to train at. You know, he gave me a 10-speed bike that got stolen off like he lived on the boardwalk there, and it got stolen one night. So it was never like, here, Ed Connors, he gives me $500 or $1,000. He took us out to dinner, so he shared his wealth with us, but the wealth of knowledge also, like, obviously, like, he gave us motivation. And I think that means so much to someone like me now, and realizing at 50, like, without Ed, like, so many people, you know, the whole Gold's Gym thing, the culture then was amazing. Even Chris Aceto would tell you, he gave Chris Aceto a job when Chris was like 21. You know, he worked in the offices where Ed's office was, and there's just bodybuilding then. I wish you could see Gold's Gym like it was in the early 90s, man. It's not even close to that aura. I walked in that gym, man, and you know, think about the first time you walked in Gold's Venice, and that air coming through that open door in the back.
Believe it.
And it's just, you know, like,
couldn't believe it.
I am, like, this is bodybuilding.
It's
and
like
the pictures on I always call it the walls of greatness. It, like, it bleeds aura when you walk through that door and you're like, you look up at those walls, right, and you see all our pictures up there. And you see Arnold, and you hear the clanking of the weights, right, the weights hitting. This is when they had metal weights, and, you know, the music is distant, but you're getting that air, and it like hits you like a ton of bricks, and you're like, holy shit, I'm here right now, you know?
Yeah, fortunately I came before COVID, so it was way better then, and I couldn't believe it. And I think it must be like someone who's like super religious and goes to Mecca or Jerusalem or, you know, something like that. And then I was like, these people get to train here every day. That's awesome. And then I trained there every day, and I'm like, this is...
Listen, man.
I train at this gym every day. Like James Caan, who also passed on, like, he was in all these films, and he was there like every day. I remember seeing him, and when I came in '93, this movie, The Program, it was a football movie, and like Andy Berninsky was training there, who, you know, he came to play in a bunch of different movies, and James Caan was in that film. And I remember like walking in there, seeing these guys, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're in that movie. And I see this guy and that guy, like, you saw this like fillers in the movies. And at that time, like, you gotta understand, where I lived in Massachusetts, everyone wants to go someplace. And I felt like a lot of the people around me, especially in the gym culture, wanted to go to California. Like, going to Gold's Gym, like, that was like, you know, people want to go to Hawaii or to go to Florida or whatever. People want to go to Gold's Gym Venice. Like, that is a vacation. If we could just plant ourselves and put a bunk in the middle of Gold's Gym Venice, that's all we cared about. Like, I wanted to train for 9 hours a day when I was there. I slept in a bunk bed first when I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the Airbnb with bunk beds.
Yeah, so it's just like, you know, I could honestly say I lived a dream life that way more than I ever imagined. And to this day still, man, like, I'm still, you know, I'm traveling like a madman, and I do it because I love it. I don't have to do it anymore. And obviously I have the brands, you know, I work with Young LA, and I got the supplement brand, and I just started like a TRT on, you know, telemedicine, and you know, I do everything. Like I'm just so blessed to be able to do it, and like to be able to touch people all around the planet. You know, I get to go to FIBO every year. I have a great working relationship with them, so I get to Germany. And listen, the best scenery I've ever seen is driving. I get to drive. I had a driver drive me from Germany to Austria, and that mountainside, like drive, it was still the most breathtaking thing I've ever seen in my life. My dream is now, and I haven't skied since I was a teenager, is to ski in Austria. And
You should go to my home there.
It looks so beautiful, man.
They shot Monuments Men there.
Okay.
And one James Bond.
Okay.
Where someone gets killed in a cabin. That's
that's my bucket list. And Angie keeps telling me, like, we have friends in Aspen right now, and she's like, this may be the year, like, I want to go to Aspen and get back on skis. I was a maniac on skis, and I never snowboard, but I think I would pick right back up, because like I ice skated last year, and like I was like, she's like, how the hell can you ice skate like this? And like I used to ice skate in the pond behind our house, and like you don't forget. I thought because I got bigger, but now of course I downsized a ton. But I was always afraid, like if I fall, I'm so big. But even being 50, like I know Arnold broke his leg a couple of times, like skiing and whatever. So I'm always scared, like, I'm going to try to go to the Black Diamond trails and like the moguls, because I love the moguls, right? Going through skiing. So hopefully I get back on some skis here soon. But, you know, when we talk about experience, that's kind of like things I can do now that I probably wouldn't think about if I was Mr. Olympia, because I was scared to get hurt, you know?
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast with Jay. I hope you got some good insight into his mind and his whole career, how everything evolved, and it could motivate you a bit. If you have feedback, please comment it, subscribe, like the video, please, and share it everywhere you can. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope we see you at the next one. Thank you, Jay.
Of course.
Thanks, man. That was awesome.